What is up, everyone? Welcome back to Eli's Echo with your host, Eli Albalos. And so it's been an interesting journey in the past few months. I know I keep reflecting on it, but I think it's just so neat to share where this kind of began and where it's kind of trending towards. But as I get into that, one of the things I wanted to kind of share is I mentioned a social media manager, Mo, and she's been looking at my gaming content and made a comment that I'm like so different on the gaming content versus the podcast content. And maybe it's just the different circumstances, but she's like, try and bring some of that to your podcast. And so I'm going to do the best I can to bring it. But ironically, what's interesting is today's message kind of doesn't match with that. But I'm going to do my best to try and be a little bit more forthcoming and bring my full authentic self to this podcast. So I'm going to do the best I can to do that. But today, what I ask you to do during this holiday season, particularly where it impacts everyone in so many different levels, as I want you to join me on a journey as I talk about having a really crappy day. I'm your host, Eli Albalos, and this is Eli's Echo. So yeah, I'm going to do the best I can to bring a little bit more of my personality to the podcast. Sometimes, again, depending on the topic, it's really hard to be really upbeat and bright-eyed and bushy-tailed. But I do get where she was coming from. If you haven't seen my Dr. Lion Den podcast, my Dr. Lion Den streaming, I encourage you to follow the link and just check it out. I have a beginning section where I just do a quick little 2 or 3 minute narrative about what's going on in my gaming world on my stream that day. And then the rest of it, I kind of stream. So I'd be interested to see some of your thoughts. Feel free to tune in for the first couple minutes before I even start gaming. And then once it hits the gaming stuff, if it interests you, fantastic, subscribe. If it doesn't, take a look at the beginning and let me know your thoughts to see if you can understand where my social media manager, Mo, is coming from. So there's that. But I kind of wanted to touch on today. I'm really shooting from the hip on this because last week I had a really, really bad day. Like the world felt like it was crumbling on my shoulders. I had an argument with my wife, and I'll be fair, I probably started it. And it was like nothing I could do was right. Not talking my relationship, but like work, podcast, streaming, emails, businesses, like nothing was going well. And I had a really bad mood, and it took a lot for me to even get motivated to even do anything. But the reason why I even bring that up today is because I think we all do a really good job having this facade. And I know I have these podcasts and I try and develop great content. And when I do it, if you watch me on YouTube or even hear me on Anchor, I have to have an upbeat kind of personality, right? Otherwise, why would you turn in if it was just doom and gloom every single day? So there is this outward facade where I can get it together for 45 minutes, an hour, and have a great conversation. Right. On my streaming platform, Dr. Lion Den, as a streamer and a gamer, yeah, like that's a cool environment. I can be myself and, try and be upbeat and play these games and have a good time with all my, what I call my lion cubs, my sons that I play with. But those are all just snippets in time. But beneath the surface, I think we all have these moments where there's just this roiling current that's just pushing us and pulling us in all kinds of different directions. And I think the reason why I want to bring that up today is because, one, I've mentioned this a couple times now, and I'm not trying to beat a dead horse, but I think it's very, very relevant. This time of year is one of the hardest for me. Again, historically, I just have a really rough past. And if you don't know, check out my origin story. But it's also like these winter months, right, where we get a lot less light during the day. I'm in Colorado, so it's cold, so it's really hard to really maintain my exercise routine. And I mentioned this in mindfulness last week, like I have to work out, not just because of the physical benefits, but like the physiological benefits. Like, I have to literally get energy out of my body. It's just how I'm built. But when it's cold, it's harder to do that on a regular basis, right? And it kind of kills your desire a little bit because, yeah, I can go out and work out in a 20-degree garage, but man, it saps the life out of you, and it's really difficult to get motivated and get things going. So it's all those things that this time of year is always hard for me. And then when I have a bad day, on top of just all these, psychological things I'm dealing with this season, then you get all of these daily items that chip away at you, all the leeches that I've talked about in the past that just feel like you're just uphill with a boulder on your back against the wind, in the snow, with ice. Like, it's like things are crushing you. But why is that even important? Why should I even bring that up in this podcast? We all have it. Like, that's the point. Right? Like, I would love to say, like, I am this even-keeled, very thoughtful, methodical manager, doctoral student, considerate husband, loving father all the time. Like, no. We all have crappy, bad days. And sometimes those days turn into weeks, and sometimes those weeks turn into months, and sometimes those months turn into years. I guess the benefit, though, and hopefully this is the case for all of you, is even during those down times, there are those up times that are spread in between. And what I mean by that is there probably are some very serious matters that all of us can deal with that maybe extend for many, many years and that are kind of hovering. But there's only, in my opinion, just my thought, and just speaking from my own life experience, there's only so low you can go before the next step is going to be upward. Now, don't get me wrong. Sometimes that low point can drag on for a little bit. I'll give you an example from my past is, my wife and I went through bankruptcy from 2008. We suffered from the economic crash. And in 2010, we had to close up our shop, our business. And unfortunately, the business was tied to our personal assets. And so we actually had to declare bankruptcy for both the business and personal. The business one wipes away, right? We had an LLC, which was smart. The personal, not so much, right? It stayed with us for 7 years. So 7 years, we carried this burden of having to go be bankrupt because our business assets were attached to some of our personal assets. And that was the only way that we could start digging our way out of the hole. So for 7 years, we couldn't apply for credit, couldn't buy a car, couldn't buy a house. Like that's a long time frame to have to go through. And that kind of stuff definitely weighs on you. My wife has had, some major surgery on her ankles, and that's lived with her for 2.5 years. So there are these times in our lives that might drag on for several years. But I think and so the point being, we all have it. So if you're going through a downtime right now, and maybe your circle of friends, I've talked circle of influence, or even as you're listening to my podcast, if in your mind you're going, man, these people or that person or Eli has it together. Well, as much as I would like to think so, it's not always rosy all the time, every day. We're human, right? But I think there's some solace to understand, like, yeah, you might be in your low of lows right now. And maybe some of the people around you might not be so obvious that they're in their low of lows. And so then you start comparing, which is a real big societal problem, right? Kind of that keeping up with the Joneses, as we try and keep up this image because we think the people around us have it all together or are all collected, and there's no issues. Like, the bottom line is you don't know what happens behind closed doors, right? That's one, you kind of hear that saying, especially when it applies to like marriages, right? Where we've heard friends or close friends that, well, they have such an amazing marriage, but like all of a sudden it's falling apart. How could they be divorced? Like nothing, I would have never have thought, right? And that saying goes, you never know what happens behind closed doors. I think it's kind of the same thing here is, you never know what people are going through. And so just be careful that as you're in your low of lows, you're not trying to compare yourself to someone else, because maybe they're really good at hiding it. And I've become really good at hiding some stuff. I think we all do, right? And it's not to say you're fake, but let's be honest. Like sometimes there's embarrassment. Like if I'm in a work meeting and I'm having the crappiest of days for whatever reasons, I might be embarrassed to admit to maybe it's my direct reports that actually report to me and I'm their leader, I'm their manager. It might be embarrassing for me to go like, team, I know this is very important for us to discuss today, but my mind's not here. I can't do this. Right? I'm having some personal stuff going on. Let me take a step away. Can we reschedule? Like those words have never come out of my mouth, but maybe they should have. Maybe if I were forthright in some of those meetings, especially like last week when I was having that really bad day, and it was everything I could to get through my meetings because I just wasn't there. Maybe it would have been better off just taking a sick day, being mindful of what I needed. Or maybe it's with family members. Maybe there's so much going on with you, but we all get embarrassed because we see people around us that are happy and go lucky around Christmas time. And we think, well, I don't want to ruin their day. I don't want to ruin their holiday. Look at look how amazing that family is. Look how happy they are. I don't want to bring myself to the table and just admit that maybe I need some help, or maybe admit that I'm not all collected like people think I am. It's embarrassing. But I think what we have to all get over is the fact that we all go through it. We all go through it. So why not be open about it when you need to? And particularly what I'm trying to get at is sometimes what might help us, and I say us because like I said, it happens to me. Sometimes what might help us is that outreach, is expressing vulnerability to someone else, saying, look, I need you right now. I need you to listen to me. Or I just need an ear because there's so much stuff just bubbling up and I need a way to get it out. So please don't judge me. Please just listen and be that ear I need. Like how amazing would that be if we could all just get over ourselves and find that one trusted person, or maybe we don't even know who that trusted person is right now. But if we just express vulnerability to our circle of influence, to our circle of people and go, you know what? Jane, I just need someone to talk to right now. I have a lot going on and I just need you to listen. Can you be an ear for me? I don't know who Jane is. Maybe that Jane is your one friend that you think like, let me try and trust this person. Maybe that's what we need. Maybe it is going to your spouse or your loved one like I did after my crappy day where I blew up at my wife and went back and go, you know what? You didn't deserve that. I'm sorry. I should have found a more constructive way to communicate what was going on with me. But here's what I'm feeling. And just bleh, like just vomit at the mouth all the stuff that's going on. If it means you have to go to a therapist to do that, then fine, so be it. But I do think that because we all experience this, we all have our low of lows. And maybe your low of low is not your psychological history that's impacting you on this holiday. Maybe your low of lows is not a relationship. Maybe your low of lows is something that's tangible like work, right? I did a podcast a couple of weeks ago about the influence and impact that's happening in the tech industry right now with this recession that we're going into and people losing their jobs. So maybe your low of low is like, I just lost my job and I'm supposed to be happy at the holidays and I'm heading down that path of being with family members, and I know I'm going to maybe have some uncomfortable conversations because they're going to ask me, hey, Eli, how's the job going? And I just lost my job at Facebook, at Microsoft, at whatever tech company. And maybe that's keeping you down. Finding a way to communicate what's going on and roiling beneath that surface, those currents, and just getting it out. I think that's something that we all need to come to the table with. And I think in my opinion, there would be this cascading effect. If we could do that with our circle of friends, I think it gives other people permission when you're vulnerable to come to you in their time of need. Just my theory, my philosophy. But what that kind of gets into, and this is going to be short, so I'm kind of going to get into what maybe some suggestions, because like I said, I just went through this and I'm like, man, I have to have this meeting today, or I have to have a company meeting, or I have to do this. And I'm like, no, I got to cancel some of this stuff. Like I'm just not there. So maybe some like recommendations that I have as I was kind of dealing with what I was going through is, one, I had to take a step back and find something that I could just distract myself with constructively, folks. That's really key. I think that especially this time of year, there are very destructive manners in distracting your mind from what's really happening with you. So I'm not going to talk about all the destructive ways. That's not the point. But the point is, find something constructive. Like, I think there's at least one thing that all of us can look back and go, this is the one thing that when I do it, I can lose myself in the moment, and I can just let all that stuff kind of be quiet, let all those voices subside, and just be at peace with what I'm doing, right? For you, maybe it's just literally taking a hike for 4 or 5 hours and being lost in the wilderness, in the wilderness. Or maybe it's exercise. Maybe it's shopping, again, constructively. Maybe you're shopping for others because it is that Christmas time of year, or you have friends, or you do adopt a family, right? But constructive distractions. Last week, nearly every day last week, I played video games and I streamed with what I call my lion cubs, my sons. I have had that real unique connection. All my sons are in their 20s, right? My youngest is 29, my oldest is 21. I have 4 sons. Since my sons were little and can pick up controllers, I've played video games with them through all kinds of different gaming systems. It's just my interest. I like games, but it's also just a connection I had with them. And so last week, nearly every day we played games together. And like one day I played games for 5.5 hours online. I streamed the whole thing with my sons. And I'll tell you what, like, that is such a good distraction. Like, take away opinions about video games themselves. Like, there's all kinds of arguments, pros and cons, left and right. You can talk about video games themselves. Who cares? But the time I spent in this alternate universe playing games and chatting and laughing, like point of time, like some points in times I was like I was crying on my stream because we were laughing so hard with each other. That's what I needed last week when I was at my low of lows. So find that distraction that really allows you to be yourself constructively, be yourself, and just be away from that negativity for a little bit. That's probably the biggest recommendation I can have. Then I think is we can apply care to your low of lows, right? And I've talked about care. I think it's been a month now, a podcast where it's kind of the principle of my book, where care is an acronym for have concern, be authentic, be realistic, and be empathetic. And normally I apply that to a leadership perspective. But if we applied it to your low of lows, I think it's very, very relevant here, right? When you have concern for others, I've said this before, I'll continue to say it. Even when you're at your low of lows, look around you and figure out who you can influence, because there's probably someone around you in your sphere of influence that probably is going through something that's lower than you, where you can theoretically reach down to them and help uplift them, right? Like, I'm a faith-based person. I said it before, I'll say it several times, but like my family right now, my extended family, there's a lot of medical stuff going on with folks, and it's really disheartening. So even when I'm going through a crappy day at work and a crappy day at business and a crappy day streaming and a crappy day with technology, and I feel like the world is crumbling down around me, And as low as I think I am, if I looked around, there are family members around me that are even lower because maybe they have a medical diagnosis. Maybe it's a lost loved one. Maybe they lost someone, a loved one. Maybe they lost a friend. Like, there is still people around me where I can go, dude, get over yourself. You don't have it so bad. You just had a really bad freaking day, right? So have concern for others. I think there's so much to be said about that. And again, that helps break that cycle of, oh, poor me, right? So have concern. Be authentic. And I think that is where finding that one thing that gets you out of your rut comes to play. Like my authentic self, I like video games, right? And I talked about this months ago where I was afraid to start streaming, but now I'm doing it. And even my social media manager is like, oh my gosh, you're a different person when you stream video games. Like, this is part of who I am. So why fight it, right? So be your authentic self. Don't be fake. Don't try and fake yourself out or talk yourself out of something. If you're in your low of lows and you want to find that one thing that makes you smile, that makes you happy, that is constructive, that's your authentic self. That can help you get out of your rut. Be realistic. I think part of the problem, especially if I look at myself last week, what was happening as I was really caught in fear, specifically false events appearing real, where I was like, oh my gosh, if this doesn't happen, what are people going to think? Oh, if I don't accomplish this, what's so-and-so going to believe? Oh, I can't believe I got this far, but there's so many other obstacles. What if it doesn't work? Like, I was just in this downward spiral of fear, of in my mind, I had all these false events appearing real. But be realistic. Like, for me, I finally had to go, like, just stop. Like, especially as a faith-based person, or if you're, believe that the universe has a meaning, maybe that helps you. But I finally had to just be realistic and go, let me figure out, what can I control right now? Like, instead of making all these assumptions of what could happen, what's in my control now? I can stop operating with fear and put us into those false events and focus on actions in the moment. Like, if I was frustrated because I have all these to-dos, all these leeches that are piling up, well, then you know what? Do the to-do list, get rid of the leeches, and that will free up some of that apprehension, some of that tension. So just be realistic. Like, I think a lot of what gets us down, and I think is one thing that has been helping me this holiday season particularly, is as a faith-based person, I'm giving it all over to God. As a person that's a believer, that's what I can do, and that's what I am doing. But again, depending on what your belief is, maybe you believe in the universe, maybe you believe in luck, maybe you just believe in fate. It doesn't matter. If there's a way for you to go, you know what? There's a reason for all of this, and I'm going to put my faith in that reason that it's going to work out. That alone is freeing. And then you can take a step back and go, okay, what can I do now based on all this tension? What can I do now to start knocking out tension? Is it a project I shouldn't be doing? Is it a hobby I shouldn't be doing? Is it a habit I shouldn't have? Is it a low-level leech that I should just go and do, right? So be realistic in what you can control. And the last thing is be empathetic. And the reason why I say be empathetic is now it's not just about you. It kind of goes hand in hand with have concern and reach around your circle of influence to figure out how you can help someone else. Right? So be sensitive to what others are going through and be open-minded. And maybe in a way, it also means treating yourself with empathy. Right? Last week, I had to finally go like, I had one voice on one shoulder that was like, oh no, you shouldn't be feeling this way. You shouldn't be acting. What's wrong? What's your problem? And then I had another voice that was like, dude, you're only human. Like, it's okay to have a bad day. Like, literally, I felt like I had these two competing voices. And I finally had to go, this one's right. Like, maybe give yourself a break. Right? Maybe step back and give yourself an understanding going, you know what? It's okay to feel how I feel. because it's normal. Everybody goes through it, right? So maybe kind of find a way to express empathy for yourself going, no, this is all right. It's okay if I'm having a crappy day. It's okay if I'm emotional for whatever reason, or maybe it's for no reason. I just have an emotional day where I need a good cry or I need a good scream. Be empathetic maybe to yourself and then maybe others around you, but no, it's okay. So there it is. I mean, it's care, right? Maybe that will help. It's concern, authenticity, realism, and empathy. If we take it out of the leadership realm and apply it to a personal standpoint, maybe that's something that can help. But I think at the end of the day, as I wrap up today's podcast, is I guess the whole point is to share. Like we all go through this. We all have a crappy day. We all have crappy times. We're emotional beings. So if you're going through something right now and you're trying to hide from it, or you're trying to ignore it, or you're trying to save face from something or someone because you feel like, well, I have to have this facade. I have to put on this false persona. Otherwise they'll think something's going on. Well, yeah, maybe something's going on. And maybe what you need to do is not hide it, but express it and share it and be open about it to others. Because I literally guarantee people, I guarantee we all are going through it. I don't care what someone looks like on the outside. If they seem so calm, cool, collected, and happy, I guarantee if there's a way to look inside of someone's minds and put their emotions on display, it's not all bright-eyed, bushy-tailed. It's not all this external. I think we all put this jacket of I need to be perfect. I need to emulate happiness. That we forget that no, we're all human beings. It's not all going to be great. Take off that jacket. Be yourself. Now, if you are one of the few people out there that doesn't have any issues underneath the surface and you are just great, then all the power to you. Maybe what you can do is share what your secret is with the rest of the world, because I'd be curious. I want to learn from you. But if that's not you, that's still okay. Just be you. Get help if you need it. Reach out, talk to those around you. If you're listening to the podcast and this is what you're going through and you're like, dude, Eli, I have no one I can talk to, reach out to me. Like I list all kinds of ways to get a hold of me. And I do mentoring sessions. I do life coaching. I don't have all the answers, but I have a pretty good ear. And honestly, in the years I've been doing mentoring and life coaching for folks, it's interesting how sometimes what people need is just an ear. And not to say that I need to have solutions, but I just have to be that person for that other person in the moment and just be present with them and express care. And sometimes that's all people want. So if that's you, reach out. If you need that and you have no one else around you that you can get it from, I'm here. I'm an email away. I'm a video conference away. So that's it from me today. I didn't realize we're at a half hour now, so I hope this podcast made sense, because literally this was just something that I honestly wanted to do it last week, but I think it would have had a much different tone, because I was like, I'm going to go live and I'm going to post all my message right now because I'm having a crappy, shitty day. Well, I'm glad I didn't because I can look back now and at least have more of my own actual personality, being authentic, be expressed, hopefully with some energy, even though this topic is dire and I know people go through it. I know I went through it. I know how I have my bad days, but I just hope that something resonated today. So if you're here, I appreciate you. Do me a favor, hit a like, subscribe to my channel, leave a comment. I know this was a really kind of rough one to get out, but I wanted to get it out there specifically because I want people to feel like they're not alone if they're going through stuff. if you need someone to contact and you don't have anybody in your immediate circle, I'm super reachable. Email me. We'll schedule a conference. We can schedule a call. But if you need someone in your corner, let me be that person. Finally, as we're in this holiday season, reach out to a loved one, a family member, a friend, extended family member. You know, folks, I think expressing care for others and reaching down around you, really, I think that's a philosophy that I keep trying to push, because you never know who might need you. You never know who, with your one perfect text, that perfect timing, the minute someone pops in your mind, I haven't talked to so-and-so in months. Let me just send a quick text. Hey, I'm thinking about you. Hey, I appreciate you. Hey, I want to catch up. Like, if that's in your mind, you don't know why. And maybe that timing is perfect and you need to reach out to that person because maybe they just needed you in that exact moment that they popped in your head. You just don't know. And ultimately, you don't know how much more time you have on this earth, either yourself or how much more time you have with someone else. So take advantage of that time. That's it for me. I'm Eli Albalos. This is Eli's Echo. Thank you.